We're so happy that you could join us tonight. It's going to be a really fun evening. We're talking to 3 of our top 25 screenwriters to watch, and we're going to hear the flip side of pitching. So we do a lot of panels about how to make your pitch better and pitching in general, looking at it from the exec side, the people that are taking the pitches. We're going to hear from the people giving the pitches. I'd like to give a big shout out and thank you to our sponsors tonight. We have a lot of great prizes, and Caitlin's going to tell us how to win those in a minute, but these are who you can win prizes from. Page Turner, they're actually giving out free entries for both their drama competition and their faith-based competition. You can choose whichever one you want. And Page Turner, the definition is a script so compelling or exciting that the reader is unable to put it down. And that's exactly what Page Turner Screenplay Competition is looking for, regardless of age, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or economic background. Page Turner is focused on finding and supporting great original stories with a strong voice that grip the reader from the first page to the last. Thank you, Page Turner. Armantourage is giving out several different prizes tonight. A couple of passes to the Industry Next. This initiative supports filmmakers and writers of underrepresented communities for a chance at winning mentorship meetings with people including Nate Moore of Marvel Studios, Brian Goldberg, a partner at WPA, Nina Erb, two-time Emmy-winning editor of Insecure and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Stephen Jaworski, vice president of production at A&E Networks. The list goes on and on. Also, they are giving out tickets for Hollywood Chills 14, which is a 2-weekend virtual entertainment summit in April and May. You can talk with special guests. There's performances, relationship building, private one-on-one general meetings with guests, including reps from Marvel Studios, 3 Arts, Plan B, Sony, and more. And lastly, a couple of raffle tickets to Armantourage's Chat for Hope campaign with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. You have the chance to win a Zoom meeting with either actress Natalie Emmanuel from the Fast and the Furious franchise and Game of Thrones, or actor Jack Black from Jumanji, School of Rock, Tropic Thunder. I mean, I hope you know who Jack Black is. These are cool prizes, right? Okay. Yeah. Capital Fund Screenplay Competition is giving out free entries. This is where your scripts are read directly by investors who buy projects and fund films at the studio level, domestically and abroad. Investors or funds may elect to option or purchase your script at any time, even if your script doesn't place in the contest. So all of the current and previous winners and the Hot 100 list are showcased at their investor meetings and the major film markets worldwide. You get exposure year after year. And last but not least, Frenzy Film Quartet Festival and the Screenplay Contest are giving out free entries. And side note, everyone tonight is going to get a code for 20% off an entry. So everybody's a winner tonight. They are one of the most renowned and important festivals in Europe. A lot of renowned actors and directors have been a part of the festival, including Sharon Stone, who held her Italian premiere there for her short film, An Undeniable Voice, which she produced and starred in. Oscar winner Billy Bob Thornton submitted his short film, Stand Down, and he was awarded Best Actor, and the list goes on. So if you don't win one of those tonight, check them out because they're all fantastic contests and events. And big shout out to Scott, who gets most of these sponsors on board. Thank you, thank you. And my last thing I'm going to say is, if you didn't know, the virtual pitch challenge is now open. So start getting your pitches ready. You have about 3 weeks to submit. It's a 90-second pitch. You can just record yourself or have a friend record you and submit it. I think you upload it on Vimeo or YouTube. Yeah. And then submit it on our contest page. And if you win, you get the final draft screenwriting software. They just came out this week with 12. So that's pretty exciting. Get a copy of that. And you also get to pitch in front of an industry panel on May 20th. Another pitching event. And some of the people who pitched in front of our panel have actually been signed. This is true, Craig. Yes. Look at, we're together. It's so fun having you right here. Yeah, there's been a lot of great success from these pitch panels. So please, please, please submit your pitches. If you've never done it before, it's a great way just to practice it. Even if you don't win, it doesn't matter. Nobody's going to see it but us. And if it's great, other people will see it too, and that's even cooler. Do you want to say a few words?
I would love to, Molly. As obviously we're both in the same room, we're both vaccinated, so that's and we're old friends, so there's a good opportunity to hang out today. There's a lot happening with the ISA website over the next 3 to 6 months. I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating. We're rebuilding all the pages and offering a whole lot of new features coming with the ISA Connect membership and with the basic or free membership. One of the pages you'll notice is the ISA Insider, which has now Variety, Deadline, The Wrap, Movie Maker Magazine, Script Magazine, Creative Screenwriting Magazine, and then all the ISA articles and pro tips. And so it's a one-stop shop for everything screenwriting and information about the business, the film industry. So check out ISA Insider if you're not checking it out now. There's, again, it's totally accessible to everybody. And then also check out writing gigs. We've been posting a lot of writing gigs, and you'll see a lot of them say ISA verified producer. These are producers who have asked us to look for content on their behalf, and they're from major companies. So even though we can't disclose who they are, because unfortunately there's some bad apples who contact those companies, and that's not the rules of the game. So we protect their names, but imagine the biggest organizations in the world looking for content. That's who we're dealing with. And our relationships are growing every day. So getting that ISA Connect membership and submitting to some gigs is working. We just had a huge success story with a 20-year-old writer who had submitted to a writing gig and sold her first feature screenplay through our writing gigs page. So a lot of exciting stuff happening with the gigs page and other pages to come soon. So please keep using the site. It's there for you to advance your career.
Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
Caitlin, would you like to tell us how we can win prizes?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So if you're wondering how you can win one of those awesome prizes, it is very simple. All you have to do is tweet during the event. All you have to do is tweet either your favorite moment of the event or a quote that you liked or something you learned. It can be at any point during the event. And all you have to do is tag Network ISA on Twitter. A lot of times we have enough prizes to go all around, so you have very good chances of winning if you just tweeted us. So yeah, just make sure, and I'll probably like or retweet it back so you know I saw it. So yeah, just tweet anything you've gained from this event or like about this event, and make sure to tag us at Network ISA.
I just wanted to pop in really briefly to celebrate and thank some of our top 25 writers for joining us tonight. If you guys, as Craig was mentioning, the Insider page, which is a really sleek, cool looking page with all sorts of fun stuff. If you scroll not even halfway down it, you'll see two familiar faces on there. And that, of course, is Desa and Rowan, as we are starting to get out into the public world, these wonderful people that we love to celebrate and kind of get their backstory, and they share some of their insight and inspiration and some tips of their own. And so definitely check that out. Check us out on YouTube as well. It's really been fun to watch some of our top 25 writers interacting with each other in the comments there. And then also, another video is coming out. Rowan's just taking over. Another video coming out tomorrow that features Rowan and Kimberly Tarong, another one of our top 25 writers. And they provide a little bit of insight about how to write a good bio for your ISA profile page, which is not an easy thing to do. Those two have done a really, really good job at it. And as long as you're getting in there, so we definitely encourage everybody to take full advantage of their profile on the ISA page. It's a really great way to get your name out there, get your work out there, to show people that you are submitting to contests, that you are progressing through the ranks. In addition to writing a bio, don't forget you do have the option to create a little video that is kind of your writer's mission statement, if you will, a little bit more about who you are as a writer. So there's all sorts of good tools on the website for, getting yourself out there, and we hope you take full advantage of all of them.
I just wanted to just give you a quick intro as to how we found these delicious and wonderful top 25 screenwriters to watch in 2021 that we have here. We have 3 of our top 25ers in the room. Also, just to shout out the writing gigs, Desa's script Red Shoes has actually got some interest from an ISA writing gig too. So they're working. So, you know, it actually does. Sometimes you kind of, I'm sure it feels like you're kind of shooting into the dark to try and see if anyone is actually seeing your work, but people are reading and they are watching and they are looking out for you. So please do submit. So I wanted to introduce them just so you can find out how they became part of the development slate. And they're going to talk to you about their experience of pitching, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Desa actually won the Creative Screenwriting Unique Voices contest with her fabulous college drama TV show Zora and Zizi. Sonali and her extremely gritty and very affecting TV drama 50,000 came through a recommendation from an ISA development evaluation. And then Rowan won the Table Read My Screenplay Sundance edition of that contest with his half-hour comedy Cloistered. And he actually went with the ISA team for his live table read to Park City in January 2020, just before the world went crazy. So he got to have that experience and kind of come and play with the ISA. So it just shows you there are all different ways to get on the development slate, and we are looking out for you and trying to find you because we love new writers and we love people with something to say. And we're very excited for you to meet these incredible these writers and their ideas and to hear about all their experiences. So without further ado, I will pass it along to Shayna.
Everybody. I want to go around to each one of you guys and just give us a little bit of a background of who you are. Don't tell me when you were 3 years old, your passion for words started, all of that. Like, give me the Cliff's Notes if any of you are old enough to know what Cliff's Notes are, probably not. Give me the, you're like, yeah. Give me the like short bio of yourself. And then, and so first we'll go with Desa.
Okay, short bio. So I've worked in TV for 11 years. The most notable shows, Walking Dead, Better Call Saul, and Westworld. So that's kind of where I've cut my teeth. And I currently have 3 projects in development. So pitching's kind of been my life for the last year. Yeah, is that okay? Is that enough? Is that too short?
No, I think that's good. We'll dive into some more details about what you were just talking about. What about you, Rowan?
I started off as an actor, graduated from Rutgers about 10 years ago and was going to do that, but life found a way. I have a few things in development, one most seriously, so that's what I've been working on this past year.
Amazing. And Sonali?
So I am a writer's assistant right now, but I have 1 unscripted format and 2 scripted formats in development right now. So pitching has been huge this year, like Desa said. It's been very front of mind. Yeah.
Great, perfect. You guys nailed that. Awesome. Okay, so before we get into the subject of pitching, just a little icebreaker, get to know you. I'm gonna throw, I did not prep them for these, so these are easy. I mean, these are funny. So I'm just gonna throw 3 questions at you, and you're just gonna tell me like first thing that comes to your mind, whatever snaps in there. These are fun. Okay. So first I'm gonna start with Desa, okay? What's one word that describes you?
Lost right now.
Okay. If you had a plane ticket to anywhere in the world tomorrow, where would you go?
Thailand.
Nice, why?
Because I love the food. It's my favorite food.
Oh,
And
awesome.
I always
Okay.
follow food. I will work for food.
Good to know. And what's your biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve is when people take too long to answer questions because they're thinking too hard about it. I'm lost.
Okay.
I'm so bad at these. I'm so bad at these.
You're done. You're good. Okay, so Rowan, you're up next. Okay. What are you watching right now? Well, not right now, but like, what are you currently watching?
I just finished Ted Lasso.
Did you love it?
Loved it.
Loved it.
So fun.
What's your least favorite word?
Schism.
Okay. What's your favorite word?
Yes.
Who was your teen crush?
Oh, I mean, I told everyone it was Buffy, but it was really Angel.
Nice. I'm there with you on that one. Even though I didn't say Buffy, I did say Angel. Okay, so you're off the hook now. Sonali, what is a bucket list item that you really want to do?
Ooh, skydiving.
Done that. If you had anybody dead or alive as an imaginary friend, who would it be?
Okay, Jane Austen, hands down.
Nice, that's a good answer. And what is your favorite guilty pleasure show or movie?
90 Day Fiance.
Nice. You guys nailed that. Start with Rowan. Rowan, if you could describe your pitching style, what's your pitching style?
Highly practiced at being conversational. Does that make sense?
Totally. You like got it down, so that
yeah, I literally write a script and then I rehearse making it sound off the cusp. Like I will literally write in like pauses and ums just to make it sound a little bit more human.
Well, you're an actor and a writer, so that makes sense, right?
Yeah, you would think I'd be good at that.
You are good. I've heard you.
Okay.
Dessa, what about you? What's your pitching style?
No, it's the same. Yeah, I write not so much in script form, it's more like paragraph form, and then I condense it into bullet points, so that way I know kind of the order of what I want to say. But yeah, I rehearse like crazy, so that way it feels very effortless and not super restrictive. But yeah, same.
Okay, and Sonali, what about you?
Exactly the same. I do the bullet points as well, and I also will start a new document to make sure I know it and just rewrite the bullet points over and over from scratch to be like, and the most important thing for me is the transitions, because even if I get lost in the wording for some of it, I'm like, okay, I know where I need to go next, so I know where to get to. Yeah, but yes, memorized so well that I can put in pauses for sure.
Nice. So do you guys have that document with you? Like, I know that it's different when you're in a room versus on Zoom, but do you guys have a cheat sheet that you take with you, or are you completely off book when you do your pitch?
I go completely off book, or not off book, but I don't have anything going in. I will say that I did have a boss who was very adamant about bringing in a folder with him, and he would have like this crazy detailed folder and he would never open it. And then when he was done, he would take it and he would put it in his bag. And it was all a ploy to make them say, oh, what's in that? Can you send me that document? It was like this weird kind of like Jedi mind trick to get people interested in something that they couldn't have. But generally speaking, no notes, just going in with what you've memorized.
Okay, what about the other two, Sonali and Rowan? What do you do?
So I've only pitched on Zoom. So I think my experience is maybe a little specific, but I will usually have it open and probably the first 30 seconds I'll be reading, but then you just get so into it, you kind of black out that I end up ignoring it for basically the rest of the time. But I heard from a writer who said when you're in person, use an iPad, because if you're using note cards, they're checking how many note cards you have left and you've lost their attention because they're like, how long is this pitch going to be? So smart. Dang.
I have the same experience as Sonali, but wow, these tidbits are amazing. I feel like I'm just
great, you guys. I'm just so on that same note, wait, I forgot my question. Okay, so we were talking about what you bring with you. I'll remember it later. I'll move on. God. Oh, how long? So when you guys are pitching and you've been doing it, recently, how long are you trying to keep your pitch to? Is there a specific length that you're targeting, or do you know I have this much and then I'm going to leave it open for how long are you going for?
So I think
sorry.
No, go for it.
I try to develop 3 different pitches for every project. I've got the elevator, which is usually I try to keep to 60 seconds, just to really whet your appetite, and then ding, the elevator, and then I leave, and then hopefully it follows up. And then I've got the brief, which is about 3 minutes, where I try to really just convey the inspiration for the piece, the very basic character arcs, and the engine of the piece. And hopefully that will lead maybe to a longer meeting in which I'll have something that's probably, if it's a TV pilot, maybe 15 to 25 minutes. And if it's a feature, possibly longer. I haven't actually pitched a feature yet, so I'm not sure about that.
Awesome. Dessa?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think overall keeping it to about 20 minutes, because the idea is hopefully afterwards they'll want to talk a lot and you want to save that space. But then also exactly what you were saying in terms of having those 3 pitches, I have those all as my one pitch. So it's kind of like you give like the Cliff Notes version, and then you give the overall thematics of what's kind of you're going to discuss, and then kind of breaking it down as this is how the story would evolve and this is what we see for afterwards. But then also kind of checking in, like, I mean, if you guys want, I can tell you more about, like, kind of like having those placeholders to get them a bit more engaged, but ultimately exactly following that system of Cliff Notes, thematics, and then if you guys have time, I can tell you more, not beat by beat, but just more, you know, like act by act, kind of how those things would play out.
Okay. Sonali?
I would say pretty much the same. I think it depends on what kind of meeting you're going in for. So like I've been in like a general where it's like 2 minutes max. And then I've been in like a proper pitch meeting where it was like 20 minutes just on the pitch. So it really depends on what they're looking for, I think, but also paying attention to the cues of like, is the audience like kind of zoning out, or are they still fully engaged? Like that's, you can then kind of extend it or cut it short based on that too.
So here's a question that, you know, sometimes gets asked, and Sonali, it's based on what you just said. If you have a meeting, but you're not sure, like, I know if it's a general, you know, you got to have that really short version, you know, to sort of whet their appetite and see if they're interested in it. But how do you guys know, or are you just trusting your instincts, or do you have someone to ask? Like, if you just said that it was like 20 minutes for the pitch, are you talking like you're going to reserve 10 minutes for your actual, you know, for your rehearsed but unrehearsed pitch, and then have time for questions? Or are you speaking the full 20 minutes?
I mean, I think that depends on what it is going in. Because for me, at least, like I know when it's a pitch meeting, if like they are interested in this specific thing. And then at that point, I try to keep it condensed. If it is more of a general, then it really is more about getting to know you as a writer and also you getting to know them. And so in that situation, I will usually ask first, like, what excites you this year? And like, what are you looking forward to do this year? And then based off of that answer, like, oh, well, I've got this thing that might interest you. And then kind of have the super truncated, condensed version to share.
Perfect. Same for both of you guys?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay.
I would say the most important thing is have like a 1-sentence logline for every project you're working on, that if they're like, I want a supernatural, you're like, oh, well, I have this project, you know, yeah.
Right. Keep them hooked
Yeah.
on you. And Rowan, since you just said you haven't pitched a feature, but for Desa and Sonali, is there a difference for you in pitching, and what are the fundamental differences in pitching a series versus a feature?
Sure. I mean, I think for me, the only difference is the ending. Because ultimately, I mean, obviously with features, it's one story that kind of has a very buttoned conclusion. And then with the series, you're really trying to sell why you need that much real estate to tell your story. And so I think what's key about it is getting them interested in the characters, obviously, showing what journey they're going to be on, which is the same as a feature. But then at the end, really highlighting how that is going to evolve over the course of 5 seasons, right? And you don't need to have everything pinned down. You don't need to like walk them through 5 different pitches, but I always say 5 because that's just kind of what I've grown accustomed to is planning for that. But ultimately showing we reached this conclusion in season 1, but this is also our launching point into how it's going to evolve in season 2, and then again in 3 and 4 and 5. So that way they see that it's not a story that will go stale if you're telling it repeatedly over multiple seasons.
Right. Sonali?
I would say the same. I think in general, pitching a feature, you have to show them that you know the whole story, versus a TV show, like Desa was saying, you kind of leave a little bit to the imagination. So it's like a little bit more about intriguing them. So you have to pay more attention to what you hold back for like them asking questions. But pitching a feature, you basically have to tell the whole thing, like, you know, soup to nuts. So.
And sorry, actually, that reminds me, just jumping off of exactly what you just said, in terms of with features, it is knowing everything because you are the sole writer. With TV, it's going to be a collaborative thing. And so it's important to have the pilot nailed down. But beyond that, they want to make sure that there's also room for collaboration, because whoever is going to pick this up is also going to be somewhat involved in who comes into your room. And so making sure that you have the broad strokes, but are leaving room for other people to kind of come in and collaborate on that as well.
Right. Good. Thank you. You guys are like so full of tips and tricks. I love it. This is going to be a great playback. So Rowan, I'll go to you for this one. When you're pitching, what do you think is the most, for you personally, what is the most important aspect of your pitch that you feel like you need to nail? Is it your own, getting your voice across? Is it characters? Is it the engine that, pushes it along? Like, what is it for you that you feel is the most important thing that you have to nail?
The moment that I see whoever I'm pitching to finally engage and like see their eyes light up, or possibly not light up, is when I'm telling them about my personal connection to the material, which I try to do very early, because you want to engage people on that personal level. I mean, all of that other stuff is super important, of course, character and story, but I feel like if you're listening to 20, 30 pitches a week, stories can start to bleed together a little bit. But if someone tells you like their very specific emotional connection to it, you're not going to forget that. You'll be like, oh, that guy had that experience and then he turned it into a pilot. Yeah, let's get him into a meeting. So I always try to have something like really personal and specific and memorable that may not even be about the script itself. It's just where it came from, the seed of it.
Okay. Dessa, what about you? What's the most important aspect for you?
Yeah, I definitely agree, because I think ultimately it's not just having a good story, it's also selling why you are the person to tell it. So it's kind of that duality of having a good script, but then also making sure that you are the person who will be carrying it forward. And I think that that's absolutely key. With TV, I think there's more need for a hook, and that kind of goes back into this idea of why now, why is it relevant now, and why do we want to invest multiple seasons into it. So I think that that's also something to lean into. But I agree with Rowan in that ultimately you have to sell yourself as much as the script, if not more so.
Amazing. Sonali?
I would definitely agree with what Rowan and Dessa have both said. I would just add that when you're delivering the pitch, because it's like Dessa said, it's equally about having a good idea and story, but also about they have to have faith that you can execute it. So whatever genre you're pitching, if it's a mystery, your delivery has to be really intriguing. If it's a comedy, you have to be funny. If it's a drama, you have to make them cry or like tug at their heartstrings. So making sure that your pitch matches what you're actually pitching is super important as well.
Wow, that's a great nugget. Make sure the tone of your pitch matches what you're pitching. That's so great. That's true. Okay, so let's talk about this personal story that seems to be the thing that, the beginning of a pitch should be like, why you, how you came up with this, something like that. What happens if you don't have, like, what do you guys do if you don't have some amazingly personal connection or reason why you're writing the story? How do you come up with or navigate that to create that introduction, that reason why? What do you guys do?
I can go first here because I'm actually going through this with my current project that I'm pitching has like absolutely nothing to do with my real life. So I would say there's obviously a reason that story has come to you and that you want to write that story to begin with. So really just digging deep into like, what about my life has made me think about this subject as fascinating, and like zeroing in on that. You don't have to have an experience or, like you don't have to have like, I have an anecdote and that's where this idea came from. It can be like, this is what I've been thinking about my whole life, or this is what I studied, or, I worked in this other industry before I came to writing, and that's where it came from. I think having that, like just a moment of specificity to kind of prove to who you're pitching that like, I am an expert in some part of this. I think that's what it's really about.
Okay, Rowan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I think it stems from the why, right? Like if it's not like a very personal story, then it's still all starts with why. Why does this story need to be told now? And if, you know, you can judge that a little bit, you know, if it's like, maybe it doesn't need to be told right now, but you know, you can make it a little bit more imperative. Like, I think you can dress up the truth a little bit if it needs dressing up.
You embellish it a little bit.
Skosh.
Add a little fun to that.
We're
Everyone loves to
writers, that's what we do.
Right. So are you saying don't be afraid to add in a little bit of fiction if your why is not maybe strong enough?
I don't know about fiction, just maybe really
Dig deep.
just dressing it up, yeah.
Okay.
Digging deep and find like really going after that why.
Right. Okay. Desa, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think that kind of jumping off to what you guys were saying, there is always a reason why you're writing something. And if you can't find that, then maybe you haven't found your story yet. Like you haven't found your story yet. I'll say on a personal level, sometimes, you know, it's not a one-for-one, you know, it's not necessarily I've gone through this experience, but it's sometimes it's a psychology that you understand, right? And I have a story, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be like vague and mysterious, just I've signed so many NDAs that I don't know, like my tongue is like a Sharpie that just redacts things before I say stuff. But I was up for a job writing for a fantasy series that was based on some books that were also some movies. And I went into it, I was really nervous because I loved this world, but also like I'm like a B-level nerd, and that I've read stuff and I absorb material, but I don't have like maps and mythology memorized, right? And so going into it, I was a little nervous about whether or not I should be going into this meeting. But then I started thinking about the characters and kind of this idea of looking at all of the good guys and all of the bad guys and realizing that all of the bad villains were just tortured versions of the good guys. And that was a psychology that I could understand, like having parents who have struggled like with addiction and depression. Like I get that mindset of trying to be this best version of yourself and battling constantly this worst version of yourself. And that's ultimately like what you see in the antagonist and protagonist in the series. And so that was something that I could speak to. And it wasn't necessarily about having all of these facts and dates and you know, mythology, because they have someone for that. Like there's someone hired to be a consultant for that. And so I think if you're able to lean into personal experience, but also just the mentality of where the characters are, that really opens up a lot how much you can connect with.
I totally agree. I think whatever it is that you're pitching on, whether it's something you came up with, a show, like IP, you have to have a take on it. And that take is going to be specific to your personal story, no matter what. So as long as you find that and you can articulate why that is your perspective, I think that's like the best thing you can do.
Amazing. So when you guys get in the room or you're on Zoom, will you just take us through a little bit about the process of, for someone maybe who's never been on a Zoom pitch or something like that. So can you take us through kind of what it's like to get on a Zoom pitch? Let's just do Zoom. It seems the thing that's currently right now. What happens first? What's the process? How do you guys end it? Who wants to go first? And you don't have to give specifics, obviously, but Sonali, go ahead.
So Zoom is a little awkward because you're like waiting for everyone to get on, you're making sure the tech works and all that stuff. And usually it starts with a lot of small talk. It'll be like, is everyone from your side on? Great. Is everyone from our side on? Great. How about this crazy pandemic, huh? Like that's like at least 5 minutes at the beginning, which is good because you get, I mean, there's like a loss of kind of interpersonal energy from not being in the room that you can get a little bit more of with that small talk. And then usually one person, it's either me or the person I'm pitching to who's like, okay, you know, let's hear about this show. And basically you just launch right into it. And the thing with Zoom is it's a little bit weird because most people will mute themselves. So you don't hear any feedback. Like if you're pitching a comedy, you're not going to hear the laughs. You have to like look for the laughs and you You have to really perform, like commit all the way through. Don't hesitate at all. And another thing with Zoom is, as the pitcher, you have to have like 20% more energy than you have in real life always. So like I'll do some jumping jacks beforehand, like just really get the heart rate up, talk loud, be, you know, have personality more than you would in real life. You do your pitch, you're like, okay, you know, any questions? Hopefully they have questions. That's a great thing. And then in my experience, I know I've heard stories where people like bought in the Zoom, but in my experience, it's like, okay, we're going to talk about it. We'll get back to you. Thank you so much. And that's pretty much it. The thing with Zoom pitches is it's super efficient because everyone wants to just get off the Zoom as quickly as possible. So yeah.
That's a really good point that you say. And I'm going to jump in before I move to Desa and Rowan about that. I used to do interviews. I was a producer in reality TV for many, many years. And when I would do interviews, one of the first things I would ever say to somebody was, you have to raise your energy level at least 10% because the camera's just going to suck that right out of you. So even if it feels strange, you're going to have to elevate your voice and like get yourself amped up a little bit so that you sound normal, because it's going to translate. It's going to suck some of that energy out. It's the same thing on Zoom. You have to just raise your energy level 20% so that you sound normal. And sometimes you have to practice that. You got to get on with somebody and run through it on Zoom, because you know, like when you get off of a Zoom, your energy is just like sucked out of you. You're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like those videos where you're like, oh, I just got done with surgery. So that's a really good point. Thank you, Sonali, for that. Rowan or Desa, who wants to talk next about their pitching process?
Yeah, sure. Zoom is new. Like it, obviously for all of us. But I prior to Zoom always pitched in person and again memorized stuff. So my first Zoom pitch, I was so excited. Like, I don't have to memorize anything. I'm gonna have it all like right here. It's gonna be great. And we start, and it's a project that I'm working on with another producer. And they had created this like beautiful slideshow presentation to accompany, and her assistant was like gonna follow along with everything. And so I start reading, and then the presentation starts and it takes up the entire screen, and my like all my words go away. And so I had this kind of like, oh wait, what's happening? This kind of awkward moment. And so I think things happen on Zoom. It just happens. My cat makes appearances. It's all just kind of what it is. And I think with Zoom, obviously not to be too comfortable, like I still put pants on, but I think that there is a level of acceptance in that you never know what's going to pop up in frame. And I think people are very accepting of that. But similarly to what Sonali was saying, in that you don't get to read people as well. I think that's the challenge of you're just kind of like, I hope you like it. I don't know. We'll see.
Right. Okay, Rowan.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely echoing Sonali's point about reading people's behavior. Like I went to the Meisner training program for acting, which is all about like reacting to people's behavior and blah blah blah. So I love being in the room. We all do, of course, but like there's nothing like being in the room and really just being like, oh, this is going great. I'm going to add this. I'm going to add that. Or if it's not going, then I'm just going to wrap it up. Yeah, you don't get that on Zoom. I find that a lot of my bad habits tend to encroach in because of that. Like, I don't know what they're thinking. So I sometimes I'll look back over past pitches and I realize that I like was smiling like a complete idiot the entire time. I've gotten that note from agents and producers being like, we love that pitch. Can you tone down your smile a little bit? It was a little aggressive. So yeah, I find bad habits can work their way in when you don't get that back and forth.
So on that note, how do you guys practice? How do you work through those sort of pitfalls or those bad habits that are creeping in? How do you practice? Who do you practice to? How much do you practice for your pitch? Rowan, you want
rehearsal. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
No, Rowan, go first. Yeah, I mean, I practice only on, like if I'm doing a Zoom pitch, I will practice only on Zoom with people, and find someone who has a lot of patience for you. Like I practice with my husband all the time, and he's heard the same pitch like 8 times, and he's like, great job again.
Rowan, who do you practice to, and how often do you practice?
I'm pitching an animated project right now, and I was practicing very consistently with two of my partners, producers. If it's like something small, if it's only like a 3-minute pitch and it's just sort of a general, or if it's some kind of competition, I might ask my fiance to weigh in, but usually I'll just video myself doing it like 3 or 4 times, and then like sort of critiquing myself. I think I'm self-aware enough for a 3-minute pitch that I can be like, okay, I need to change that. I also did hire one person who specializes in public speaking at one point, because I knew I had the pitch down, but I felt like my personality wasn't coming through, or I was just smiling too much. And she really helped me sort of work through just making a much more human connection over Zoom. So that was very helpful.
Interesting. Dessa?
I feel like a bad student now, in that I don't have like a person that I go to per se. Back in the day, I would pitch in traffic when I had a commute. Like that would be my pitch time, and that's where I would focus on practicing. Currently, like the projects that I have producers on, I will do like a run through with them prior to going into like the actual pitch. And then before that, I would do practice pitches. I had a producer on a show that I worked with, and even though I knew she wasn't going to buy anything from me, I would just go pitch to her like everything that I had, just to get the practice and just to kind of work out kinks. And it was just a good way to remind her that I could do more than get coffee, but also help me just kind of get comfortable with that environment before even getting to a place where I was doing it for real. So that was helpful.
And what's the time frame? So you say you have your pitch on Thursday. Are you practicing all the way up to Thursday? Do you stop on Tuesday? Do you not start practicing until Wednesday? Like, how much time do you give yourself between your actual pitch and practicing?
As much time as possible, I think. I mean, I think it's one of those things in Rowan Way and about actors. It's like, how long do you memorize your lines? It's like however much time you have. If you have a day, you get it done in a day. If you have a week, you get it done in a week. And I think that that's kind of a similar thing. Like I think the shortest turnaround I've had was a week to figure out what a pilot was. Like, and that was tough. And just kind of it was a lot of legwork on the front end and then kind of cramming to get the actual pitch done. But prior to that, it's just as much time as you have, you make it work. I don't know, it's a terrible answer, but yeah, I'm of the Tim Gunn philosophy of make it work.
Make it work. Let's make it work.
That's a great answer. I completely agree. Like it's exactly about fitting it into how much time you have. I prefer meetings that have like a really quick turnaround, like like they want to meet tomorrow on something completely new. And usually they'll go in knowing like, okay, we know that we didn't give you much time. And I'm like, no, this is the best. I don't have to spend a week either prepping it or like feeling guilty that I didn't prep it enough. If I have 24 hours, I will work all like 23 of them, and just it'll be out of the way. It's nice. The best.
Sonali?
I wish I had meetings like that, so that could be my like excuse going into it. But I agree with Dessa. Like, as much time as you have to plan it within that time frame. But I also am of the mindset that I don't ever want to get like stale. So I stop practicing the day before, unless it's like a 1-day turnaround. If I have like a week, I'll stop practicing the day before no matter what. And I don't let myself do anything with it. Like I don't read it, I don't look at it. And like by that point, you've done it so much, it's like kind of constantly running in your head. So it is there. But I think taking a break from it really, for me, like helps me come back to it fresh when I actually have to perform it.
And do you guys practice like what questions they'll throw at you, or do you just try to know your project inside and out to answer those? How do you guys navigate the questions that come?
I imagine entire conversations with whoever, even if I've never met them, I'll just have like whole conversations. The problem is the questions that my phantom execs are asking me, they never actually ask me. And it's always a much better conversation where I'm like super charming and like they just can't get enough. That has never been the case. So I try to ask myself as many questions as possible, but it very rarely pans out the way that I hoped.
Right. Dessa?
Agreed. No, and the time, and I'm very awkward sometimes in that the times that I would write out questions and have answers, if they asked a variant of that question, then I would get tripped up and like tweak my answer. It just comes out a bit disingenuous, I think. But I think ultimately there are kind of catchphrases that you can use to make you sound like you know more than you do. Great question is always really nice because then they feel flattered. Like, yeah, I am smart. I've got opinions, and I'm glad that you see that they're great. Also, never say I don't know, but you can say, oh, that's a great thought. Like, I think there's a couple of avenues that we can explore, and I'll definitely next pass. Like, I'll get back to you. But like, I think that there's ways to avoid getting stuck in a box, while also showing them that you think they are brilliant and you're open to collaboration in some form.
Nice. Sonali?
Totally agree. I think I go into it with the philosophy of, like you said, knowing your story really, really well as you think you can possibly know it. So you are prepared for most of the questions. But like Dessa said, there's a lot of times where you don't know. And in the cases where you don't know, what I try to do is like, if there's a lot of like quick thinking that happens, but when they're asking you a question, try to understand what they're trying to get out of that question. Like usually in the question, there's a note of either this motivation isn't clear, maybe it's like, they're like, oh, have you thought about this? Which means like, oh, they didn't like this part. So you have to like kind of improvise your answer based on what you think they're trying to get at and what it's like an exam where what are they trying to figure out what I know or like where I'm going to go with it. And you have to answer it kind of based on that. I totally agree. Never say the words I don't know, but there are like, I think in every pitch, there's been a question or more that I don't actually know the answer to.
Right.
And sometimes they're weirdly specific, like, oh, the lead character should have a sister-in-law who's a nurse. It's like, we can figure that out.
Love it. Rowan? Did you already answer this? Did you already answer this one? You did.
Yeah, I prattled on about something or other.
No, you did. You're right. Okay. So what happens when you guys are in the room and say you completely forget where you're at? You lose your train of thought, like I just have done like 3 or 4 times during this conversation. How do you guys recover from that? Do you have any tips or tricks? Or do you have any, like what Dessa said, like, well, that's a great question. Like, do you have any spacers that you use to try to get yourself back on track? What advice do you have when you get stuck?
The golden rule is don't say, I'm sorry. Don't apologize, because that automatically puts them in a position of power of like, oh, I've made a mistake now and I have to make it up to you. What I do usually is, like I said before, like knowing where my transitions are, those are like my signposts, and I try to get to the next one as soon as possible. Another thing I do is I will like restate the sentence that I just said in a fresh way while I'm trying to like come up with where I'm going next. It's really about like, don't let them know that you've lost your place and you're floundering. Just try to like get to where the next thing you know is.
Will you just talk a little bit, you've said it a couple times, will you just talk about your transitions? What do you mean by your transition?
Yeah, so usually it is a turn of some sort. So a character turn, a plot turn. And those are, first of all, those are what a lot of these people get really excited by. They're like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's fresh. Oh, I didn't realize that could happen. Oh, I love that they fall in love. So if you know, like basically like every kind of turning point in your story, that's what I use as my transitions. And it's like, oh, unbeknownst to her, this is happening or whatever.
Cool. Thank you. Dessa?
I agree with the signpost and getting to that next stop. The 2 key phrases that have saved me many a time are, well, anyway, all this is to say is, and then you can kind of jump to the next thing. Or I'll say, well, short story long, and kind of call attention to the point that I've rattled on about something. And sorry, I just saw like a quick question in the chats about if you can swear in a pitch, and the answer is yes, but sparingly. And again, kind of going back to Sonali was saying, it tonally has to match what you were doing.
It's probably not in a kid's show.
In a kid's show, that's what I was going to say.
Oh, that's why they're not buying it.
Oh, that's
Drop
great.
the F-bomb.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
So Rowan, what do you do to recover from when you lose your place or you completely forget, you brain fart?
Well, I'm going to start using these key phrases that Desa and Sonali have gifted us, but I usually, I just kind of, I just kind of dory it, just keep swimming. Keep talk. Like if you're stuck on the one point that you're already on, elaborate on it, until the next thing comes. Or if you're at the end of a beat and you forget what the next transition is, maybe I'll go back over. I'll reiterate what I've already talked about and make it seem like it's for their benefit. Like let me remind you what we've already talked about, but really I'm reminding myself. And then usually at the end of that list, I'll be like, and now we can continue. Are we all? It's a refresher. Are we all refreshed? Okay, now I remember what I'm gonna do.
I think that's a good point though, Rowan, what you just said. And you did that with humor. I think that, if I was going to instill any wisdom of my own, it's sometimes, well, one, you have to read the room. If you have a very serious group, then yes, you can't really joke around and kind of have that, kind of attitude. But sometimes it just works best if you just own it and you laugh and you get yourself back on track without saying sorry, without apologizing and having a breakdown and being like, oh God, I don't know where I'm at. Can I start over? Just catching yourself back up, but having a little grace for yourself and letting yourself off the hook a little bit, because everybody messes up. And it kind of, sometimes it can, if the room is right, and again, it's always reading the room, but sometimes it kind of brings down the heaviness a little bit and kind of opens it up. And then if you get a smile, then that's probably, well, it can be good and bad if you get a smile, but you know what I mean? So let's talk about when you guys are pitching your characters, how much detail do you go into about your characters? Are you just talking about the arc of the character, or are you going into details and backstory and all of that stuff? Like how much detail do you get into?
I just do arc. A little detail, just like a little detail, just so you know who the person is. But you don't want to get too deep into specifics, because then there's more reason for them to say no, right? Like if your character was once a gardener and killed a fern, then the person you're pitching to is like, oh, I just lost my fern and now I'm distracted. Like I think if you say though, like they like to garden and this is how this story evolves around. Sorry, I'm looking at my plant for advice. But I think like just enough so they have an idea of who they're following, but not enough to dislike them for any reason.
Who's next? Sonali?
Yeah, no, totally agree. It's mostly arcs, especially for TV. I would say in terms of backstory, if I had to like strategize in which backstory I would give, it's if your character makes any either slightly unlikable or ambiguous or like shocking decisions in your story, give the backstory that explains why they made that decision. Because otherwise the exec's like, do you know your character? And if you've like, remember this happened to her 20 years ago, they're like, oh, okay, yeah, you do.
Rowan?
Absolutely. I think it depends slightly on the type of project. Like for a comedy or drama, yeah, I'll mostly give an arc, but if it's like an animated show for kids, I'll definitely want to say a lot more things about these characters, including like physicality, like they might not even be human characters. They might have special abilities. I'll definitely want to go into a little bit more nuts and bolts along with the arcs.
Nice. Okay, so do you guys have any good pitching stories or any really good, like funny anecdotes about advice that you got or feedback that you got? Or what's the best advice you received or the best feedback you received?
The best, like just, it's more of a pep talk before a pitch because I was super nervous, was everyone in that room wants you to succeed. All the execs want to hear a great show. Whoever your mentor or producers are, they want to sell it just as bad as you. So like, it's really easy to go into it being like, oh my God, they're going to judge everything about me and get really self-conscious, but actually everyone wants you to do well. So I really like, it was right before a huge pitch. I was like dying of anxiety. It was my first big one. And I was like, okay, they all want me to do well. And I don't know if I did, but it made a difference, like just for me.
Nice. I love that. Dessa?
Yeah, jumping off of that, I think it's also important to remember that you wouldn't have that meeting if they weren't already interested in some level. So you're not going in completely raw and like trying to sell them on the basic idea. Like they already like you to some degree. And I think it's also it's important to remember that there's so many variables and factors as to why they don't buy a show or a film, and some of them have nothing to do with you, right? Like you could be bringing them Saving Private Ryan, but if they've just done a war movie, they're not going to take it, right? Like there's so many things. And so you want to go in and absolutely do your best. But what I tell myself is, I'm going to go in, I'm going to kill it. They're not going to buy it, but they're going to remember me for the next one. And I think that's ultimately what I'm selling, is how I think, how I approach story, and just making sure that I'm in their repertoire for when something else comes along.
Right. That's good. If nothing else, be memorable and
in a good way. Yes.
In a good way. Yes. Rowan?
Completely that. My fiance likes to call it sending out ships. You know, you can't go in expecting or even really wanting that sale, you know? It's all about intention. It has to be about giving of your story. You know, if you go for the prize, you're never going to get it. But if you're sending out all these ships with this amazing story, you only need one to come back. And the more ships that you send out, the more likely it is that will happen at some point. It takes some patience, but yeah, I've found that to be true. In terms of making yourself memorable in a good way, I will say for some in-person pitches, I have had the great gift of tripping into the room, which just like sets everybody at ease. You know, I didn't fall flat on my face, but it's just a really great way to break the ice. I'm not saying make yourself trip, but if it happens, it's a gift.
Listen, when I first started, I was like an assistant on my very first show. And I think it was the second day of shooting, in the lunchroom with everybody, I choked. And
like literally?
I was choking. And the medic had to come over and give me the Heimlich maneuver. And obviously I lived, spoiler alert. But guess what? I was memorable and everyone knew who I was after that on that show. So, hey, don't choke, don't trip, but you know, use it to your advantage, I guess, afterwards. Okay, so we're gonna wrap this up. I just want each of you guys, you kind of already did just now, but if you have any final words of advice or you know, any tidbits or anything for all of our viewers, I guess viewers.
I think it all comes down, for me, it all comes down to love. You know, it's if you love what you're pitching, they're gonna love to hear it, even if it's not for them. You know, they might not want to take it any farther, but it will be a successful pitch if there's love in the air, if there's love in the room. Coming to a Hallmark channel. Yeah, I guess that's it. It's kind of corny, but that's how I feel.
Also being true to how you would want to tell a story. And obviously you need to know your audience. You need to know that, you know, you can't try and pitch horror to like ABC Disney, but I think on some level, I ran into a problem when I was first starting of trying to tweak my work to what I thought was expected. And it just made everything fall apart, because then you're getting notes on things that you don't even believe yourself. And that's always really hard. And sometimes it works out really well. So I had a pitch last year for a show and they didn't love it. But the producer who I pitched to was like, it's not great for this current project, but I see how your brain works and I want you to come work on this other one. And so I think that, and I'm still working on it. So I think being confident in how you approach story and the aspects that draw you to a story, it's not going to win over everyone, and that's okay. But eventually it will lead you to where you're comfortable working.
Amazing. Thank you. Sonali.
Jumping off of both of those, I think they're both phenomenal answers. I would say be as authentic as possible. Kind of like what Desa was saying, that don't try to cater too much to the person you think you're pitching to, because it automatically takes you out of like your natural comfort zone. And it is like a little bit nerve-wracking if you're like, trying to perform in a way that's not natural to you. And I think the more you can show who you are, like we've been talking about, like people will call you back for different things. They'll remember who you are, not just in this one specific context, but in many others as well. And finally, if you're pitching something and you love it, like Rowan said, show that you love it. Like if it's a comedy and you think one joke is particularly hilarious, you can laugh at your own joke. People love that. They're like, oh, look how delighted he or she is by their own joke. It's great. And so not too much, obviously, and don't be like, I'm hilarious by this thing, but like be human, I guess. I think people connect with your emotions in addition to the emotions you're describing in your characters. So let that come through.
Do you guys when you're on Zoom, what's the deal with leave behinds? Do you, through your rep, do you send something later? Like how does that work?
I will if it's been discussed or if they ask for it. So usually, like, I've never had the experience where someone is like, can you send me like a written version of what you just pitched? It's usually like, do you have a fleshed out Bible? I want to read the pilot. It's like something kind of tangential that's attached to it, but I won't ever send it unsolicited.
Right.
Agreed. Yeah, because you never know. You could say something in your pitch that is very close to something that they're already developing.
Yeah.
And then by sending something unsolicited, automatically it's like, oh no, can't take it because of all the legality around everything. So I mean, it's good that you're eager, but also just kind of knowing where the boundaries are. And so absolutely having reps follow up, or if you don't have reps, something I used to do is after a meeting, like I would just email to say like, oh, hey, thanks. And then if you need anything here to follow up. So that way you've established a line where they can reach you, and letting them know that you do have things if they ask.
So that's the key, if they ask. And I think there's just one more. This is an interesting one. So when you're pitching a feature, not necessarily TV, but do you pitch the ending of the feature?
Yeah, because they need to know what they're buying. I think it's good to have mystery. I would say all of your mystery and all of your intrigue and all of your suspense goes into the narrative. Like you don't at the very beginning say, oh, he finds this key and spoiler, the key like unlocks like you can let that mystery build up just as your audience would be watching it, because ultimately they want to feel what your audience is going to feel, and then off of that they will know whether or not it's something that they want to invest their money in. So absolutely spoil it, but at the correct times.
Yep.
Thank you guys so much. I feel like we had so many great nuggets of information. I'm so happy that we did this flip side of pitching. So thank you all so much for giving us your tips and tricks and advice.